Brothers and sisters who just tuned in via YouTube, this is part 3 of our lesson, the Dietary Law Remixed. Go and check out part 1 and part 2. And I think this is part 4, Brother Julius.
This is part 4, but you know what?
It's so good.
Time go by too fast, BLAQ.
It's so good. This is part 4, brothers and sisters, and we got to share this with you. It is so many other things. Excuse me, pardon me for calling this part 3. I don't want to confuse the YouTube listeners or those who are on the show. But now we are about to bust this thing out the water. We're all the way in the New Testament. In the book of Acts, 10th chapter, we read where God showed Peter all these wild beasts. Peter said,
vision.
"No, Lord, I've never eaten anything that's common or unclean." But God said, "What God has cleansed, that call not thou common." Let's find out what he was talking about in this chapter. Let's go back to the beginning of the chapter and establish a subject matter.
Line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Your precept is your subject matter. What is he really saying? What is the Lord really trying to show Peter through a vision?
What is this whole chapter actually talking about?
Well, let's read it.
Verse 1, Acts 10 and 1. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band.
So he's an Italian. He's a Gentile.
Who is he talking about in this chapter? Cornelius. What is this chapter talking about? A man by the name of Cornelius. Well, what about Cornelius?
Go ahead. Verse 2.
He was a devout man,
right,
and one that feared God with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God all the time.
So he observed the behavior of the Jews, how they believed in one God, how they worshiped one God, how they kept the Sabbath day, and he liked that, and he wanted to find out about him. So the Lord was getting ready to instruct Peter to teach this man.
We don't read nothing about food, brothers and sisters. Let's find out more about this man named Cornelius, this Caucasian who was an Italian. Let's find out more about him. He saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day.
Talking about Cornelius, yes.
An angel of God coming into him,
right,
and saying unto him, Cornelius.
Yes.
And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, "What is it, Lord?"
Right.
And he said unto him, "Thy prayers and thy alms are come up before a memorial before God." We don't read nothing about animals or food. It's all about a man by the name of Cornelius
who wants to learn about the faith in the God of Israel.
And this is what this whole chapter is talking about. Anything in the chapter is just going to be making reference to the subject matter, which is Cornelius.
Verse 5.
And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter.
Right.
He lodgeth with one Simon a tanner, whose house is by the seaside.
Right.
He shall tell you what you ought to do.
So now, what you ought to what? To do what? He shall tell you, go find Peter, the Israelite. Just like the Lord told Joseph, interpret Pharaoh's dream. Told Daniel, interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Brother,
the wise men told Herod. Herod said, where Jesus going to be born? The Israelites told Herod in Bethlehem of Judea. Now, in the days of Cornelius, go find Peter, the Israelite. He going to tell you what you and your house have to do to be saved.
Brothers and sisters, I'm about to share something with you that may be kind of shocking to you. But I'm going to tell you, based on what we read right here, God does not deal with any other nation other than Israel directly. God does not deal with Gentiles or these Caucasians directly. Why couldn't the angel just tell Cornelius what he ought to do? That's not the protocol of God.
That is not the protocol.
The Father gives it to the Son.
Yes.
The Son gives it to an angel. The angel gives it to an Israelite, and the Israelite gives it to the Gentile or the Hamite or the other nations of the world.
Revelation 1:1.
That's what you call learning something on the way to learning something.
Can't be broken, BLAQ guys. Where we at?
At verse 10.
Right.
At verse...
well, read it.
At verse 7.
Right.
And when the angel which spake unto Cornelius was departed, he called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier of them that waited on him continually.
Come on, Ice.
And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa.
Yes.
Looking for Peter, this Israelite.
Continue to read.
On the next day, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop, or the roof, as we call it, to pray about the 6th hour.
The 6th hour of the day, which is 12 midday. Go ahead, Ice.
And became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, they were still preparing their food. He fell into a trance.
Who did?
Peter did.
So Peter began to have a vision. Come on, Ice.
Now we're about to pick up where we started at, where these preachers who are misinformed, where they took you to, without taking you to the beginning of the chapter,
or to the book of Genesis.
This is now
Leviticus.
Now we have led up to where we went into when we first came into this chapter.
Yes.
And we did it that way because we wanted to show you how people throw you off, not really knowing what this chapter is talking about. Now we are establishing that it's talking about Cornelius.
Right.
He needs to know something. He has to go to a man to find out. Verse 11.
Yes.
And saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descended unto him, as it had been a great sheet net at the four corners and let down to the earth.
Yes.
Wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air.
Well, Black Ice, you got your food here. This is not food. We're talking about nations, Black Ice. Keep reading. It's going.
And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.
Because
I want you to underline the word common and unclean.
Right.
Underline it.
So the Lord is getting ready to prepare. He already done prepared Cornelius to go and find Peter. Now he's preparing Peter to receive Cornelius, but he's trying to bring the Gentiles into the New Testament church, but he got to prepare his messenger first, his priest.
Verse 15.
Yes.
And the voice spake unto him again the second time,
Right.
What God has cleansed, that call not thou common. There's that word common again.
Yes.
This was done 3 times, and the vessel was received up again into heaven.
But Black Ice, do Peter really understand? He saw a vision, he heard a voice, but he's trying to figure out what this thing means.
Verse 17.
Yes.
Now while Peter doubted, underline the word doubted, in himself what this vision which he had should mean.
What this what?
Vision.
Go ahead.
Behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate.
Go ahead.
And called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, was lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision.
So Peter is still trying to figure out what, Lord, you trying to tell me? I'm trying to understand this thing. But Peter's still thinking on the vision.
And why was he thinking? Because he know that God don't change.
Right.
While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men are looking for you.
Yes.
Arise therefore and get thee down and go with them, doubting, there's their word doubting again, nothing, for I have sent them.
Wait a minute, you mean, so God is working through his Spirit, right? By his Holy Spirit.
Yes, sir.
So therefore he said, I have sent, but it's the Lord who's working through his angel to instruct Peter. Come on.
Verse 22.
Yes.
And they said, Cornelius the
Read 21.
Verse 21. Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius, and said, Behold, I am he whom you seek. What is the cause wherefore you are come?
Go ahead.
And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that feareth God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned from God by a holy angel to send for you into his house, and to hear words from you.
Go ahead, Ice.
Then called he them in and lodged them, and on the next day Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanied him.
He had 6 more brothers that went with him, Black Ice. Continue to read. See, we have to read the whole thing because we're not talking about a flesh and blood food or what you call animals.
Well, let's find out, Brother Julius.
Let's read it to him.
Verse 24.
Yes.
And the next day after they entered into Caesarea, now he's going into Cornelius, and Cornelius waited for them and had called together his cousins and his friends.
Right.
And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him.
You mean Cornelius fell down, the Gentile fell down before the Israelite?
This white man fell down at the feet of a black man and began to worship him.
Another story, another lesson, another time. Come on.
Verse 26. But Peter took him up, saying,
This is what a true servant of God would do. You don't get the high mind, Black Ice, because you're a servant of God. You're a servant of God. This is what you should do. Read it.
Stand up, Cornelius. I myself also am a man.
Go ahead.
And he talked with them and went in and found many that were come together. And he said unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come into one of another nation.
Right.
But God has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean.
Oh, rise, Peter, slay and eat. Not so, Lord. I have never eaten anything common or unclean. Now I know what the vision means. God has showed me that when somebody believes in God and fear God and honor God, then he's no longer common. He is acceptable. They are brothers and sisters in Christ.
Here
has
it is,
nothing to do with food.
The hook, line, and sinker at verse 28. God showed me through the vision, brothers and sisters, not that I should not call any animal common or unclean.
But what, Ice?
He said right here, verse 28, but God has showed me that I should not call any man common and unclean. So there's nothing in this chapter that takes away God's dietary law.
Nothing.
Here in 2016, January the 26th, you still cannot eat pork. You still cannot eat catfish.
Can't do it.
You still cannot eat anything that God deemed to be abominable or unclean or that wasn't permissible to eat. Now, why did God use man, Brother Julius?
Because men are described, or Gentile nations are described as wild beasts.
Let's look at this Caucasian man. What symbol does he use in Chicago for his football team?
A bear.
What symbol does he use in Chicago for his National League baseball team?
Another small bear, baby bear, which is another beast of the field, which is a cub.
What does he use in Philadelphia for his football team? He considered himself to be
eagles. Philadelphia Eagles, another wild beast.
Chicago has a basketball team that Michael Jordan used to play for, and he was called a Chicago
Bulls, a wild beast, a wild beast. What about the NFL team in Detroit? It is called the Detroit.
The Detroit NFL team, he calls himself a lion.
Wild beast. Gentiles are described as wild beasts. Man is now just put it on sports figures and figurines and
even
titles.
the nations, the symbol of the nation of America is a bald eagle.
The symbol of Russia is a what?
Is a bear.
And the symbol of Greece is the goat. And the symbol and Great Britain,
a lion.
A lion.
So, brothers and sisters, the Caucasian, the Gentile
nations, Europeans
have
and their
always
decisions.
used animals to represent themselves or describe themselves.
The lion, the Medo-Persian Empire, the bear, the Greek Empire, the goat or ram, the Roman Empire, a wild and terrible beast.
Let me take them to one more place, Brother
Wow.
Julius, before we close out our show.
Wow.
And we're going to end this, and we're going to do one more part, brothers and sisters. We do have a show coming on after this, so I'm
Wow.
going to make this real quick. Stay tuned for part 5, brothers and sisters.